Is a cold war brewing inside the ANC? The battle between Fikile Mbalula and Panyaza Lesufi is heating up. Is it just a mirage and the usual exchange between comrades, or something more serious at the heart of the party? Let's find out. Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX. If you're new around here, I'm Mpofu-Walsh, and on this channel we explore South African politics through interviews and analysis. Before we get started, firstly, thank you so much for helping take us to 150,000 subscribers. It's amazing. I see my editor and director punching the air as I do that. So we really thank you for that. And road to 200K starts now. Okay, so clearly this channel, someone sent me a message joking, is destabilizing the country, because every time we have an interview, it turns into headline news. And there's a press conference and all kinds of things happened. It happened with Mbalula when he came, and then Panyaza Lesufi, Gauteng Premier, came on SMWX, and well, the rest is history. For a week or so, the ANC was dealing with the fallout from that interview, and Lesufi was sent a letter. It seems like all things have calmed down, but then it's heating up again. So I want to explore what this represents, because I think there's some deeper insight we can gain from this feud, which seems to be between Panyaza Lesufi and Fikile Mbalula, and what it means for the ANC and for the country's future, because I think it's actually as serious as that, potentially. But let's start with the background, because of course, Mr. Lesufi came on SMWX. Check out that interview, over 200,000 views now. And I asked him questions about the government of national unity. Of course, there had been a lot of criticism of Lesufi from particularly the DA, that he was dividing the so-called GNU. I asked him what his views were, and it was quite clear. You can go and check out the clip, that he, unlike Mbalula, was not going to criticize the GNU up front. And what he really said was, this was something that the ANC had to do. The leadership agreed on it. But he also added that this is not the end. The GNU is a strategic setback, and the ANC needs to try and win back a majority. Now, quite frankly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It was quite a disciplined statement based on what Lesufi had been accused of saying. It wasn't as serious as that. He also did say later on in the interview that effectively the ANC and its historic partners, or those who are more strategically aligned to the ANC, should not rule out the possibility of working together. So maybe that was a step in which he was speaking more about potentially breaking with the DA, for example. But it was all couched in vague terms, and there was no suggestion that the ANC should break from the GNU. But I suppose tied to what Lesufi said about the future, he didn't rule out working with the EFF and MK party. But again, there's nothing necessarily particularly crazy about that. I mean, unless the ANC says they're never going to work with those parties ever again, one would imagine that there will always be a possibility of a future coalition which is different from the current coalition arrangement. Having said that, Lesufi gets invited to the ANC's national officials meeting, and apparently Mbalula asks him to explain himself based on some reporting, largely out of News 24. There was some reporting in Daily Maverick as well. So the meeting comes to naught, and again, News 24 reports that, in fact, it was Mashad who particularly backed Lesufi, which I think is interesting, in saying that this is really a storm in a teacup. There's nothing that Lesufi needs to account for in terms of his utterances. Lesufi has also said that in terms of the coalition dynamics within Gauteng, where there's been a clear break from the usual so-called GNU partnership, in other words, the DA has not been part of the arrangement and has actually been ousted from government in places like Tshwane, that, according to both sides of this divide, was an ANC decision. So what we have is a situation in which, in my view, it's clear that the ANC is divided. The extent of the division is not clear, but there is at least a difference of opinion on the national trajectory of the ANC and how it should be communicated in public. There are some in the ANC who want to extol the virtues of this coalition arrangement, the so-called GNU, and don't want anyone to offer anything like even a critical word. And then there are others maybe on the far extreme of that, like the SACP General Secretary Mbalula, who just want nothing to do with this so-called GNU arrangement. And then there are those in the middle, like Lesufi, who are saying, well, the ANC had to do it and it was the right thing to do at the time, but it's a setback and it's not the best thing since sliced bread. And clearly those three streams are I wouldn't say at war with each other yet, but we're seeing the opening salvos of a serious internal debate inside the ANC. Now, I want to take a look at what Fikile Mbalula has said recently over the weekend, because just as we thought this was dying down, we've actually seen a resurgence of the war of words within the ANC. This is what Lesufi said in a recent interview to ENCA.
We have reached a stage in the organization, like the ANC, where people think they can do as they wish. The National Executive Committee was very clear that we must stamp the authority. And where, if necessary, discipline people, discipline comrades. And that's what we're doing. That's why we called the likes of Panyaza to account for their statements. We will not stop. It's not going to stop. I will do it, including taking people to DC.
So that was ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula saying this issue is not dead. I want to go a step further because the SACP met as well recently. And this is what Mbalula had to say about the ANC's 100 days of celebration for the GNU. Take a look at this.
We have rejected the invitation. We will not be going. Albeit it's been laced together with thanking the people who voted for the African National Congress, for which we were in the campaign. It feels sad, but we will not be going as a Communist Party.
So that just exemplifies that there are serious conversations going on inside the ANC and between its alliance partners. Lesufi, on the other hand, has kept his powder dry in terms of commenting on the reaction to the interview. But he has acted in terms of what happened in Gauteng. And I want to take a bit of a look into that because the Tshwane situation is a bellwether for Gauteng and the national picture. It's clear that the ANC was unable to decide on a premier candidate for Tshwane, even though they had agreed to oust Silius Brink, and make sure you check out my interview with him as well, which was interesting just before his ousting. The ANC was unable to agree on who they would field as a mayoral candidate. Now, Action SA, which has found a partnership and an alliance with the ANC in Gauteng, put forward Dr. Nasipi Moya, and she was the eventual winning candidate. So the ANC agreed to settle on the Action SA candidate. But if you look at this mayoral committee, there are both EFF members there, which I find fascinating, as well as ANC members. So you can see that there's an alliance brewing in Gauteng between the EFF, Action SA, and the ANC. Lesufi, Mashaba, Malema. Now, clearly this is directly at odds with what has happened on the national level, where the ANC, the DA, the IFP, the Patriotic Alliance are some of the major parties within the governing coalition nationally. So what Lesufi has done in action, if not in words, is he's successfully defied the national leadership, if we're being honest. The national leadership has been talking about trying to align the GNU down into provinces and even down into cities. And Lesufi has said, no, basically. It won't happen here. It won't happen provincially. And he has even succeeded in ousting the DA from a mayor position that it held. So if you step back, what Lesufi has done is actually quite strategic. Rather than speaking out against the GNU in public and saying it's a terrible thing, his actions have revealed that he is not a supporter of the ANC allying with the DA. On the other hand, you have people in the ANC who are supportive of the GNU and are happy to ally themselves with the DA. Now, why do I think this is important going forward? Because I foresee that this is going to be the key fault line on which the ANC decides its national leadership after Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa has been gliding through of late and in many ways has avoided any forms of accountability, although we know that even though the NPA, I think, erroneously decided that they won't be following up on the Phala matter, which I think is a serious dereliction of the duty of accountability. But anyway, we know what happens with NPAs and South African presidents. It's never a good story of accountability. So Ramaphosa is gliding through, but his time is limited to the extent that the ANC will go to conference in 2027, and he will not seek a third term. If he does, my goodness, there will just be blood on the floor on that conference, symbolically speaking, of course. So what happens up to that conference will determine the future of the ANC. Now, I started in my analysis of the Sali Mapaila interview by saying, well, it's clear that alliance partners will be on one side of the debate. And they will be saying that this decision to join with the DA was a historic mistake. But it seems that there will be certain aspects of the ANC that will also join with those alliance partners. And I think that Panyaza Lesufi and Gauteng, the Gauteng ANC, will be a key block in the lead up to the ANC's leadership conference that will be opposed to the GNU. So you'll have the SACP, you'll probably have COSATU, you'll have what radical elements are left in the ANC, and you'll have the Gauteng ANC. Now, other ANC leaders haven't played their hand yet, but what I'm starting to think might happen, and bear in mind, we're a long way out, and a lot can happen. We've even seen, that health and those kind of things can affect the ANC. And let me just stop here to pay my respects to Tito Mboweni, who was a lovely person who I had the joy of meeting, and may his soul rest in peace, and my sincerest condolences to his family and his friends and all who knew and loved him. So having said that, to come back to the ANC political narrative, it seems to me that Paul Mashatile may be the figurehead who runs on this campaign that would be supported by the SACP, the Gauteng ANC, where Mashatile has strong support, and COSATU. And if Mashatile can bring the support of other key ANC or some key ANC figures with him, then he'll actually have quite a formidable route to the presidency. We've seen that the DA was unable to dislodge Mashatile from the deputy president position. We've seen that although Mashatile has faced a lot of criticism in the media and from opposition parties, he has remained ensconced in his position in the ANC. And if you look at Mashatile's political history, he has been in every possible structure of the ANC you can think of. He's truly worked his way from the bottom up. And he's been a minister, he's been a Gauteng provincial chairperson, he's been deputy president now, he's been in various positions within the ANC, from treasurer to deputy president, etc. So he knows his way around the ANC. And when we go back to this reporting that he was the one backing Lesufi, I want to add yet a further aspect to this, because there's a part of my interview with Lesufi that a lot of people haven't picked up yet, which I think is maybe the most important part, not his remarks about the GNU. It was when I asked him if he wants to be president of the ANC in 2027. Now, here's what he said. I did a video which was quite popular recently, and I was looking at the future of South Africa. And it was about, obviously, President Ramaphosa is the ANC leader until 2027. Yeah. And I was looking at who's the next ANC leader. And I mentioned some names. I mentioned your name at the end. But the people in the comments were not happy because they said I didn't mention you prominently enough. And I was quite taken aback because then on Twitter, everyone said, how can you not say Lesufi won't be the next president? How can you not say that? What would you say to...
I'm not keen.
You're not keen?
I'm not keen.
You're not keen. But people are keen.
I'm still wet behind
my
ears. And I don't think that to transform this country, you need to be a president. I'm of the view that there's a generation before us that must lead this country. Our time will come at the right moment. That there is leadership that must take us to the next But that leadership must not have a carte blanche. And that leadership must know that will not tolerate things that will not make the African National Congress to be what is it.
Now that struck me because what Lesufi was saying is that I don't want to be president. I'll be there or thereabouts, basically. But there's still a generation above us that can lead this party. Now, Mashadile is the immediate generation above Lesufi and Mbalula, who are in the same generation. So it seems to me that there may be some kind of battle on the way to 2027 where the side that will succeed Ramaphosa, the pro-GNU segment of the ANC, has not really decided yet who their presidential candidate would be. Maybe they'll try to pull Mashadile to that side of the ledger. But as it stands, it's not clear who their presidential candidate would be. But a Mashadile president, Lesufi deputy president would be quite a powerful leadership proposition for the other side. It would clearly carry Gauteng, which is a relatively large province, and it would have the support of alliance partners. Mbalula may, because he's been very vocal in support of this GNU arrangement, he may be one of the key leaders around which another campaign builds towards 2027. Could he lead the party? Could he put himself forward as a presidential candidate? Or would he bow to ANC tradition and have a more senior figure ahead of him as president, where he would take the role of deputy president? So clearly we may have a clash between a Mbalula deputy presidency and a Lesufi deputy presidency, or some constellation of the two, with Mashadile maybe deciding which way he wants to go and which slate he would lead, or a pro-GNU faction trying to find a candidate to lead their slate, as it were. So I think what we're seeing is actually the battle lines beginning to be drawn towards 2027. And that's why I think the Lesufi-Mbalula squabble could be an early sign of some of the internal leadership battles within the party going forward. Now, we will see these so-called 100-day celebrations. I have no idea what we're celebrating after 100 days of the GNU, other than the fact that the government has survived. But it's just strange to me that political parties are celebrating early when there's nothing to celebrate yet. But the ANC and the DA, and look out for another episode that I'm going to be doing about whether the GNU is working or not, they are now going to try and PR their way into this GNU 100 days story. And we'll get various public spectacles and celebrations. But behind those celebrations will be key machinations within the ANC as to whether the GNU is the right direction or the wrong direction for the future of the party. Now, of course, much remains to be seen, and there will be more interviews on SMWX, don't you worry, over the next months and years. I'm hoping the SG of the ANC will come on SMWX. We've been in discussions, and I'm hoping he'll be able to come at some point, so I'd love to have him on too. But you can rest assured that this will be the platform where you can decode and understand, through our interviews and our analysis, what the future of the ANC just might hold. Thanks for sticking around and making sure that we get to 150k subs. Like, share, subscribe. Share this on all your platforms and your WhatsApp groups. And keep it locked on SMWX. See you on the next one. Ayeye. Fam, I just wanted to interrupt this episode to let you know the 4 ways you can help SMWX. Way number 1, you can invite me to speak at your institution or company. Way number 2, you can advertise on this channel. Way number 3, you can become a member of this channel. The link to the membership is down below. And number 4, you can buy merch, that's books or hoodies. Now let's get back to the episode. All our contact details are in the description box below.